I don't think there is a thing called Indian cuisine. I think that's like saying, people ask me, what's your favourite Indian dish? And I say, what's your favourite European dish? Because India is not a homogenous one country. It's, when you spend time here and you go, you realise that the language changes, the interest changes, the sports changes, but above all the food changes. And that's what's so exciting about coming. What do you got? Is it 44 official languages in India? Is it 44? I think it's 44. And you've got about 4,000 different cuisines. Some people say 19. I reckon you can travel down the west coast, and every 50 kilometres the masalas will change, the flavours will change. So I think that's what's so exciting. That's what makes food so endlessly stimulating, because there's another great flavour to discover.
Welcome to our podcast. This is Crafted for Good, presented by Godawan S3 Premium Water. We will dive into the world of food, flavors, and of course, fascinating minds behind them. Before that, a quick introduction. I'm Akhilesh. I'm the brand ambassador with Diageo for Godawan by Diageo India. Matt, as everybody knows, a multi-award winning journalist. I did not have to do the introduction, but just for the formality.
I think the best description is Matt Preston gets paid to eat cake. This is my job. I get paid to eat cake, and here there's a large amount of cake that I can eat. New cake, fresh cake, exciting cake.
Let's get started, Matt. Welcome to the podcast. Welcome to JLF, and welcome back to India.
Thank you very much, Akhilesh. I know it's weird. I think I was in Jaipur in November, so it feels like, and I've just been. I'm coming back in March, and then I'm coming back again in April. So I feel like I probably need an Aadhaar card and a little apartment somewhere. So everyone wants to sell me an apartment in downtown. I want it near the jury, and somewhere between the jury maybe and the lassi wala, if that's okay.
I think that would be my first question. How does it exactly feels when every time your aircraft lands in India? What is that first emotion?
The first emotion is, oh my gosh, I got the Air India flight that actually reclines, and also amazingly the in-flight stuff worked. It's bizarre. Air India is the only airline where I can sleep 8 hours straight. I have no idea what it is. So I think that maybe is a sign for my kind of, not excitement, but the comfortable nature I feel. I mean, my first time in India was 1990. I think I had a visit here about 5 years ago. I swore I'd never return. And then I came back 3 years ago, and I fell back in love with this country, and I fell back in love with one really important thing, which is this incredible new generation of Indians, sub-25 Indians, who are intelligent, engaged. They want to learn, they want to be the best in the world. Obviously inspired by the amazing Indian CEOs that are around the world now. It's a brilliant thing to say. It's a totally different attitude coming here, and especially if we come here and work. We have a group of young 25-year-old or sub-25-year-old apprentice chefs who travel with us when we do dinners here in India, and we can walk into any kitchen in India, no matter how great or how not so great, and we can put together an amazing meal with their help. And this would have been almost impossible to do 5 years ago. It's a totally different attitude that I find that young Indians have, and I find it incredibly exciting.
On that note, I would love to start on a very lighter note. We have all seen MasterChef Australia has been a massive success in India as well. We have enjoyed watching you on the show. But we also know that your expertise, and we have seen your entire journey is spread across different horizons, which is much more beyond television, radio, and the food industry. We'd like to talk about that.
Well, I think that thing when you become old, I'm over 60 now, and you have that sudden realization that you've probably got 20 years left, 20 good years left. So what is it left to do? What's the stuff that really interests you? What are the questions you want to answer? I was lucky I had an amazing time with MasterChef that I loved every moment of it, but I wanted to do other things, wanted to tell other stories. I was talking about, I'm currently obsessed with whether a chair can be a piece of great artwork. I was discussing it with our friends who've made these beautiful chairs. So there's other stuff that I'm obsessed with, whether food can be art. If food can, anyone here had an emotion where you try something and it brings an emotional reaction? Maybe it reminds you of your grandmother, or And I think I think great art does that. So I would like to argue that the best food is great art. It doesn't have to be fancy food, but I think that's really important. And one of the things I did with that was in when humans left Africa and they traveled around 60, 70 million years, 70,000 years ago, they traveled around. They went through to get to Australia, where our First Nations people ended up. They came through a place called Sulawesi in Indonesia, and in Sulawesi is the oldest figurative artwork ever painted, 50,000, dated about 55,000 years ago. And I was fascinated to see what was the subject of that artwork, because food matters to us, but how much does it matter? And there is a cave, the earliest complete piece of figurative artwork is a cave, and it's a penny of a pig. I mean, animals representing nature, your clan symbol or whatever, but there are 700 caves, 500 pieces of artwork, and they are fish, ducks, and lots and lots and lots of these wild boar. But they're not just any old animal. These are all particularly plump, extra tasty looking animals. So these are wish fulfillment drawings. So the earliest art. So food is there. Even before we start writing stories, food is there. We're celebrating, we're hoping, filling wishes. So those stories that we could, on MasterChef, they would have a phrase, Gary and George, they'd nudge each other and go, Matt's going to go on a canter. And that was a canter, you just had a canter. A random piece of rubbish about food history or whatever that I really enjoy, that the contestants would roll their eyes at. I would never make it to television, but now I get to make it for television and tell those stories, and I find that really exciting. But also, more importantly, I get to travel. Last year I thought, well, I need to see more of the world. MasterChef and the TV stuff I did after that stopped me traveling. I was a travel writer as well as a food writer for a long period of time, so I thought, let's travel. So last year I went to 15 countries. Malaysia was one of them. I went to Mozambique to shoot a project on conservation, which we'll talk about later. It is the most exciting. I liken it as a food writer to recharging your batteries, going to a strange place, going to a new place, going back, which is, I think, the ultimate privilege, is going back to someone you love and having the same thing you've eaten again. As a journalist, you tend to never do that. You tend to always look for a new experience. So that's the joy. So I think next year, well, I'm back in India in March, and then I'm back here again. Then I'm in Sri Lanka, Taiwan, Hong Kong, Croatia, Albania, Portugal, Italy, the UK, Morocco, because it's so exciting. But most importantly, and I think it's like the same thing we always talk about, people always ask you what's the best restaurant you've ever been to. I always when I write those answers, it's always, I was somewhere with these people. And again, it's having those experiences with people you love. I had 3 weeks in India, and I did it with my wife and with 3 other couples, and that was the most amazing experience, because half of them had never been to India before. So you're watching that experience, and you're watching the first experience of having kokum or seeing cardamom actually growing on the ground, and they're wide-eyed like kids again. I think that's what travel does. It brings you that wide-eyedness, and they all fell in love with the lassi while they're here.
At any point, have you thought of getting an Indian passport?
Yes. Well, actually, no one's recording this. I wrote my memoir. I wrote my memoir, Big Mouth, which came out a year and a half ago. And in doing that research, one of the things I discovered was that my paternal grandmother's father was born in a place called Sudna in West Bengal. So that makes me 1/16th Indian, all right? So I reckon I can pull on the blue jumper and I can stand there with Rohit Sharma at the crease. Maybe not with Virat Kohli, because Australians and Virat Kohli. And so I think that I've always felt an affinity coming here. I don't know whether that's got anything to do. In fact, the tragic story about that is he was born there, and at the age of 5 was put on a ship back to England and didn't see his parents for 12 years. He was sent to a boarding school, and he didn't see his parents for 12 years. So, and then he had and that really messed him up. So it's not a great story, not a happy story, but it makes me want to go to West Bengal, see what I can eat there.
I was about to mention your roots back to India, but I'm glad you did. And indeed, I think there's a lot of storytelling in everything that we do. Recently, we have also heard a lot of stories around craft. We talk about a well-crafted culinary experience. We talk about a well-crafted beverage experience. And definition of craft could be different for everybody. Like for me personally, craft is about authenticity. It is about honesty. It is about passion that goes behind creating that product or that experience with a unique character. What truly defines the term craft for you?
It's a really good question, because so much of when we talk about food as art, I think people mistake art for craft, and then craft is a skill. Someone once said to me, if you're drinking Thumbs Up, that's a beverage, and that's functional. That's functional. The next level up is a craft, which is maybe your handmade chinotto, and then the next level is something that you taste and brings an emotional reaction, and that then becomes craft. So I'm a huge fan of craft. I mean, whether it's expressing a unique flavour, and we'll probably talk about food trends, but one of the marvellous things we're seeing is that people taking ideas from overseas and then doing their own version of it, their own idiom of it, whether that's, for example, spaghetti bolognese was never an Italian dish. Everyone sees an Italian dish. It was invented probably in either Australia or England. So it's very much this idea that you can take ideas from elsewhere. You can then you make something truly unique and truly relevant to where you're from.
We have seen you for the longest time on MasterChef. You're responsible for some of the remarkable changes in the industry. We have seen you as a journalist. We have seen you on television. What is that one golden rule that you would like to talk about for every food influencer or every critic?
Care. I mean, for me, the whole idea is you're trying to. My job. I'm not part of the food industry. I'm part of the media industry. My job is my readers or my viewers, and I'm trying to tell them things that they could do that they'll enjoy, that are worth spending the time and the money on doing. So that marrying people to good experiences is, I suppose, really what I want to do. I think one of the great things about MasterChef was the idea was embracing the fact that food mattered, that food was there at all the major points of our life. You think about, I've got a friend who's just invited me to her brother's wedding down in Mumbai, and it's like, and it's going to be Parsi food, and so the invitation, would like to come to the wedding, there's going to be Parsi food. It was like the wedding's pretty important, but there's going to be Parsi food on banana leaves. So that's kind of I think we know that food is there, but someone I was talking to just earlier on was saying, MasterChef maybe fell in love with food, and I thought, well, every Indian loves food. It's one of the great things, one of the reasons I love coming here. But what it did is it was okay to love food. You're allowed to talk about food. You're allowed to have a moment with someone and say, have you had these desert peas? Have you had this sadi? Have you had this curry here? Have you been to Jori and had the tikki they do there? You were allowed to do that. You were allowed to discuss, the best place to go and have a masala tea in the streets of Jaipur. I believe there are two, I've been told. I've been to one of them. There's another one I've got to go to. I think that was then becomes allowable. I think it's important that it's kind of, and I think hopefully that helped elevate the idea of cooking as being something more than just a, and it is still, for most people, it's an awful lot of drudgery. But my job then as a recipe writer is to try and make it quicker, easier, simpler, tastier, and make it quicker for you to put something on the table that the kids are going to eat. For most people, cooking is not the dinner party. It's how can I make something that the kids are going to eat, and that the older kids or me and my partner are going to eat as well.
That's quite an insight. And well, this was my moment to, tell everybody about your roots back to India, which I'm sure not a lot of people know about. And we have also heard that Indian cuisine is one of your favorites.
I'm going to stop you there, because I don't think there's a thing called Indian cuisine. I think that's like saying, people ask me, what's your favorite Indian dish? And I say, what's your favorite European dish? Because India is not a homogenous one country. It's, when you spend time here and you go, you realize that the language changes, the interest changes, the sports changes, but above all, the food changes. And that's what's so exciting about coming. What do you got? Is it 44 official languages in India? Is it 44? I think it's 44. And you've got about 4,000 different cuisines. Some people say 19. I reckon you can travel. You can travel down the west coast, and every 50 kilometers, the masalas will change, the flavors will change, the souring agent will change. You know, maybe you've got dahi, maybe you've got yogurt, or I'm sure you've got mango, or you've got. You know, I've just come back from trying a lot of kokum and korg vinegar. Korg vinegar is one of the great ingredients ever created. I think that's what's so exciting. That's what makes food so endlessly stimulating, because there's another great flavor to discover.
We always say one lifetime won't be enough for you to try every Indian dish.
But you can try. You can try.
But at the same time, with all your experiences across India, do you think that Indian techniques and the entire Indian food culture has in any way influenced or helped shaping the global food trends?
Absolutely. The use of spice, the understanding. I think when I was growing up, spice was seen as heat, and now we know that it's it's not. It's really, heat is the unimportant. I think what we're starting to understand now is the use of spice as a way of flavor releasing. So first you might taste the cardamom in a dish, then you might taste the nutmeg, and how to achieve that. And that the Thais are masters of it, and the Indians are becoming increasingly masters of it. And when people start understanding how flavor can unfold and become a journey on your tongue, that's a brain frazzling moment. So I think that's one area that I'm finding excited about India. The spices are always going to be the great idea. It's also one of the great fusion cuisines. You know, people always say, "Oh, fusion, it's ridiculous." And I say, "Well, what about vindaloo, one of the great fusion dishes ever? What about any time you put tomatoes in a North Indian curry? You know, all these elements of fusion." So India is one of those great examples of many cuisines coming from one place. I don't want to get into discussion about, you know, we have it in Australia. What's Australian cuisine? Because we've got 1 million Indians, we've got 400,000 Vietnamese people with that heritage. So how do you pick one dish to feed them all? I kind of think it's a degustation with probably 30 or 40 small dishes.
We understand that you have also traveled across the globe, from Taiwan to Hong Kong to India, and even in India, places like Kerala and Jaipur as well. How, in your opinion, you experiencing different food cultures and diverse food cultures, how exactly has that shaped your perspective on the entire craft in the country?
Wow, that's a really interesting question. I think there are two parts of that. I think the first part is the headline stuff, and that's the stuff you take back. You know, I'm now if I'm going to make a dish which has any connection with my Indian experiences, I will always caramelize slowly my garlic and my ginger. I never did that before, but that's the difference between a great dish. But I also think nowadays there's an increasing focus, especially with chefs, on celebrating extremely local stuff, ingredients that are very much from one place, and that you go. I was in. Anyone been to Farm Law in Bangalore? Farm Law's on a mango farm. They mainly use they've got a small herd of cattle there. They grow mango. So much of the food comes out of that area. And that idea of they have a certain type of fire ant there that when you taste it, tastes the green mango because it grows in the mango plantations. So that idea of super local ingredients, you know, things you can only get in that one place, where it's a vegetable. You know, the desert pea would be a great example here. Never had it. You know, a savoury pea is such a holy grail for someone like Dan Barber at Blue Hills, but you have them growing here in the desert, and it's delicious. Braise those, you'll never eat meat again. Maybe. I won't say that to a Punjabi, they'll look at me ridiculously.
What's also interesting, and this is something that I've also personally seen, we see you talking about the fine dining food, the fine dining restaurants, and the street food with the same passion. What we want to, and what I personally want to understand here, when you look at a food dish, or a beverage for that matter, what is that exactly that you are looking for? Are you looking for the skill? Are you looking for the craft? Or you're also looking for the culinary experience behind it?
I think you're comparing apples with oranges. The only way I've found to legitimately rank food is by, if you try something and the next morning you're queuing up waiting for the shop or the restaurant to open to have it again, that is a 5-star review. If you ring your friends and say, we have to go to this place, that's a 4-star review. If your friends ring and they say, where should we go? Your prompted response is a 3-star, and it goes down. And if you go, I'm not going there, it's terrible, that's like the no-star review. So I think it has to be an emotional reaction, because you can't rank, oh, it's good on sour, not so good on salt, texture's good. These things all play into when you're trying to work out why you like something, although but I think initially, and that it doesn't matter whether that's a fancy, whether it's the butter kebab at that restaurant in the Rambagh Palace, the best lamb chops in the world, whether it's that and that's fancy and fine dining and there's gold cutlery everywhere, or whether it's going to have a bowl of chips or a masala chow or something like that. That experience can be equally special. It doesn't have to be expensive to be so. And I think one of the dangers is that we end up valuing things because of what they're valued. There's a very interesting thing that they do that Dr. Charles Spencer, the neuroscientist in the UK, does. He gives everyone, does a wine tasting, 5 bottles of wine, blue dark bottles of wine, and they taste the wine, and all the bottles are different. And he asks people to rank the quality of the wine, which wine is it, which wine's best. And invariably what happens is people rank the wines, the heaviest bottle is the best, and the lightest bottle is the cheapest. And the answer is all those wines are the same. So there's so much perceptual stuff going on in our heads with that. Someone said that it's a bit like Fernie. You have Fernie, Fernie, the dessert you have here, Fernie. Fernie tastes better off your finger than off a spoon. Yes? This is true, yeah? This is true. We all know that. Yeah, licking, that's right. And because and then it's a bit warm, and so I think those things also play into how we enjoy the connection of that dish. Your grandmother might have been a terrible cook. I've done a lot of conversations with people about their grandmother's cooking, and lots of conversations. My grandmother was a terrible cook, but she made these things and I loved it, and I know it wasn't very good, but that combination really means something for me. And I think we all often have, it doesn't have to be a great dish to be a dish that matters to you, and I think that also plays in. I grew up very near a football ground called Stamford Bridge where Chelsea play, and there's a certain smell of boiling onions that brings back going to those football matches when I was 5 or 6, and the hot dog you'd have on the way home. So there's that boiled hot dog, boiled onions, truly disgusting, but that smell and that is very nostalgic.
So would you say that the thought process is the same, and it does not matter if you are
I think it's the emotional reaction. You go, wow, that's delicious. And it doesn't matter whether it's, for me, my mum's roast chicken, really good French fried potatoes are unbelievable. A ravi dosa, like a dosa with white butter. Oh my God. Like white butter. How many times you had butter? And then you have white butter on a ravi dosa, and it's melted, but it's also cold, so it's not quite there, it's melted. And you just go, oh! That's got nothing to do with my cultural background. But when I had that the first time, and also because I'm with 2 Indian guys, they're both leaning forward going, is he going to like it? Because they love their white butter. And I just get notes now from them. They send me notes saying, when you're coming to India, white butter is missing you. I go, I'm missing white butter too.
But we also have generations of experience on the streets. But at the same time, you might have an experienced and educated chef who has done his hospitality studies. But you're saying it does not really change your thought process.
I think the story will always influence what you're tasting. However, I also think there is no doubt that if you go to Cavatina, Avanish Martin's restaurant down in Goa, and you're from Goa, your experience and the stories that he's telling with that food will be far more vivid than mine. That I can hear it, but I don't feel it. I don't have 5 generations of experience of understanding why bread making is so important down to the people of Goa. So I think that's first time I went to Noma, I went with someone from Copenhagen, and I loved it, but they had a really deep experience because it was like, oh my gosh, that is a bread and brown beer, a play on a bread and brown beer dish that when you're sick in Copenhagen, your mum gives you. And so it was a dessert, but it brought back all those warm memories of motherhood and stuff like that and being cared for. And so that had a real power for them. So that's one of the problems I as a traveller don't get that. So you have an advantage. You might feel the same way if you came to Australia and had, I don't know what, a Tim Tam, we'd go, you may not get it the same way we do.
I absolutely would agree to that part. I think the relevancy would also play an important role. What exactly intrigues you the most about events like Jaipur Literature Festival? How has been your experience?
Well, I'm a history nerd, so I'm in heaven. I can see Willie Dalrymple discussing the the Opium War. I get to listen to people from whole different areas. I mean, I think that's one of the things when you're on television, people perceive that your areas of interest are very narrow, and that's what you talked about. What did you doing radio was about? That was about being able to do all the other stuff I love. You know, I don't just love food and drink. I also love sport. I'm a sports nerd. I've travelled around the world to watch soccer. I love cricket. You know, but I'm also fascinated by history, and I'm fascinated by politics. I'm fascinated by rare earths and the impacts of minerals and what's happening in the Congo at the moment and DRC at the moment. So there's all these other things that you're interested about. So you find ways of talking to experts in that area who will tell you, and this is the great thing about coming here, it's like doing your own radio show. You listen to some of the world's great experts. What is it? 6 Nobel laureates, 11 Pulitzer Prize winners, and 8 Booker Prize winners here. I mean, what's some of the greatest minds in the world in Jaipur for one event, and then me. I feel like I'm very much the shallow end of the pond there.
I really wish I could talk about cricket, but I think we should leave that for the next time.
Yeah, okay. I think we should probably leave that alone. You did beat us at kabaddi. We had a kabaddi team come over from India and play a hand-picked group of Australians, sports people, and they got royally beaten up by the Indian team. They couldn't say kabaddi long enough.
Over the years, in your experience, and at the same time in dining culture globally, we have seen different trends. We talk about sustainable sourcing. We talk about rise of veganism. We talk about multiple trends which have come and which have gone away. What, in your opinion, are the trends that we can expect which are here to stay if we talk about?
We talked about extreme locality and about unique experiences, about unique things from where you're from. That's number one. I think the other thing is where that we have a huge issue. It's a great Dan Barber line, that we don't have an issue of, we do not have an issue of not growing enough food. We have an issue that it doesn't go to the right places. So how do we deal with the incredible oversupply in some areas, the incredible waste in some areas to support people with food insecurity? I think that's a really big issue. I'm involved in a charity back in Australia called Second Bite. We rescue, amazing, you think Australia, an affluent country, 1 in 6 Australians suffers from food insecurity, not being able to buy enough stuff at the table. So we rescue 32 million kilos of food a year and then redistribute it to 1,000 different charities. So I think that idea that we have to support everyone getting food becomes super important. And you have it here. You have it here with the Langer. You know, the Sikh Langer is a great example of that. So we're not really reinventing the wheel. We're just taking something that's, you know, to use Willie's Golden Road analogy, an idea that comes out of maybe Amritsar, and then take it back to Australia and do it on a scale that's suitable for there.
This is a different style of a question that comes to my mind. What do you think is harder to preserve, the biodiversity or a perfectly puffed souffle?
Oh, biodiversity. Who cares about a souffle puffing? A disastrous souffle can always go again. Biodiversity is kind of gone, although I maintain this idea that once it's gone, it's gone. Once it's extinct. But I went to Mozambique. In Mozambique had a 20-year civil war, which was terrible. It was centered in the center of Mozambique, around Beira. There was a place called Gorongosa, which is a wildlife wildlife park, kind of national park there. It used to have the highest density of lions in the world. At the end of the civil war, there were 5 lions left. It had 200,000 large game animals. At the end of the war, it had 15,000. So we destroyed that. You know, they were shot for game. They were blown up in minefields. And over the last 6 years, there's been this massive campaign to see if you can bring it back. And amazingly now, there are 3 packs of wild dogs. There are 4 prides of lions. There are 120 large game there. So it is. But it has to be. That to me is super important, and seeing that and knowing that, I think so often there's a a sense that the problem is too big. Starvation is too big. Poverty is too big. Loss of biodiversity is too big a problem. But then you look at that and you go, okay, it can be fixed. You just need to have the will. You have to need to get everyone involved. You know, part of the reason saving those animals is because of the 600 people living around the ring of the park, 300 involved in the park in some way. So they have a vested interest in protecting animals, looking after them. So that's a big difference. But I love that idea, the old African proverb that, you know, that we do sometimes think that we're too small to make a difference. But if you don't think something small can influence your life, spend one night in a dark room with a mosquito, and you understand that the small thing can make some big changes to your performances.
Is that everybody's responsibility when we talk about sustainability or caring to give back to the society? Is that an important tenet in the culinary world?
I think it hasn't been historically. No, I think there's been I think chefs in a way, you know, there's a large number of chefs at the end of a service will turn out their bins and say this is profit that you're throwing away. I went to a restaurant recently where they use a third of the stuff they use is rescued, and they don't throw anything away. They do all their own washing. They don't send out. They're trying to be totally zero waste. So I think it's there, but it's still, you know, there's doing things for a political reason. There's doing things at home. In Australia, 1 in 3 carrier bags full of food we buy, we will throw away. 1 in 3. That's an incredible. But stopping that, whether you not buy, you either the two things happen. Either you don't buy that third bag, but then you have to donate that money to an organisation that's going to feed, you know, like kindergarten age kids in South Africa, where you've got a massive problem, sub-Saharan Africa. You've got to actually funnel that stuff back because we're all comparatively affluent societies. So certainly if you go to Mozambique is incredibly poor.
So what we do exactly at Godawan S3 Premium Water is the conservation of Godawan bird, which is the state bird of Rajasthan, oftenly also referred as Great Indian Bustard, right? Mm-hmm. A few of the last about 100 of them left in the state of Rajasthan. Mm-hmm. The question here is that how would you feel at events like Jaipur Literature Festival? Can we use the culinary experiences to make people aware of themes like conservation?
I think it's already happening. If you look through the program, I think it's something that people are interested in. I actually just had a cup of tea with someone who is here talking about conservation and ecology. So I think that's important. There was the talk about under a mineral sky, about the impact of minerals, so that and how those can be mined sustainably. That impact on indigenous culture, people, livelihoods. So I think it's crucial. This is a festival of ideas above all everything else. It's a festival of ideas, and I think the fact, again, walking through the festival, coming here, I was amazed. It would have been, the average age would have been 24, 25. That's incredible. Normally, you know, historically, I ran the Melbourne Food and Wine Festival for 6 years. Normally, your market would be 55 to 75. But the fact that all these young kids are coming, it's accessible, they're sitting in sessions, taking notes in the notebook. That's incredibly satisfying. I know it's very cool to kind of knock the younger generations, but I see things like that and I get quite excited about the future.
I think I would thank the youngest population that we have in the country.
What are you, medium age 27, half the population, 1.6 billion, under 26 or under? It's amazing. Look at that, it's unbelievable.
I think that gets us towards the last leg of the podcast, and this has been personally very inspiring for me, and I think this will also inspire a lot of young folks who will be watching this podcast, this video, who are trying to shape their career in the culinary world. Any closing statements from you?
Find something you love to do. That's all. Because then when it gets hard, because it will get hard, you'll still continue doing it. And I've been very, very lucky. Everything I've done I've had 3 major careers. Everything I've done has been, oh my gosh, how exciting to wake up in the morning. Nothing really matches eating cake for a living, but you know, that's the really important thing. You know, find your passion and understand it's going to take a lot of hard work, and then understand the 10,000 hours statement. You've got to get good at something, you've got to do it for 10,000 hours, and you've got to ask as many people as possible for advice and for help, and to reach out, because that's also really important. You know, what's the great line? 2 ears, 1 mouth.
Is it also equally important to get the right mentor at the right time?
Oh yeah, it's the metaphor is surfing. You can paddle really hard for a wave, and MasterChef's the case like that. MasterChef we just came along at a time when then there was this kind of Jones generation. Barack Obama was elected in America. There was this kind of, it was a warmer, softer, friendlier, nicer world, and we had a show that didn't want to be horrible, mean, car crash type television, and it resonated. And I remember at the end of the first year getting a letter, and I read it. It was like it was like, oh, it's great. All the family sits down. We watch this. We love the atmosphere. People are so nice to each other. The contestants don't bitch about each other. And I looked at it, and it came from Amritsar. And I've gone, this is it. How that's, you know. And we're making it. Got to set in context. We were told it was a little TV show. We made it in an old chicken shed in a showgrounds. So it's like the idea of being here, talking about food from Australia. It's unbelievable. The fact it's been embraced here, it's bamboozling, boggling. The fact that the people kind of engaged with it, it's unbelievable. That's the biggest privilege of my life, but it's also the most exciting thing to know that, you know, people enjoy cooking and they come up to you and say, "Wow." I do feel like a bit like Shrek or Barney the dinosaur though, because they say you were so much part of my childhood, and I go, "Okay, I was the big purple or the big green monster." Just non-cartoon.
Super insightful for me personally, and I'm sure for everybody present in the room. It's been a real pleasure talking to you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for joining us.
And I'm sorry to everyone who just wanted to come in here for a cup of coffee, you know, and sit there, and they've had to not talk, not be on their phones. It's been really frustrating. It's great. Thank you so much.
I think it was super insightful and great conversation, ladies and gentlemen. Sir Matt Preston for you. Thank you for joining.